Anger in the workplace. It's a powder keg that costs U.S. businesses an estimated $300 billion annually in lost productivity, absenteeism, and healthcare costs. Today, we're unpacking this explosive issue.
Wow, that's a staggering figure. I had no idea the impact was so massive. What's driving all this workplace anger?
Well, it's a complex issue, but there are some common triggers. Unmet expectations are a big one. You know, when you're promised a promotion or recognition and it never materializes, it's like a betrayal of trust.
Mhm. I can see how that would be frustrating. Are there other major causes?
Oh, absolutely. Unfair treatment is another biggie. Perceived favoritism or discrimination can really fuel resentment. And then there's the classic micromanagement scenario, feeling like you're not trusted to do your job without constant oversight.
Ugh, micromanagement. That's enough to make anyone's blood boil. But, you know, I'm curious about how anger actually manifests in the workplace. It's not always just people yelling, right?
Right. Well, that's what makes this topic so fascinating. Anger can take many forms, from the obvious to the subtle. There's the classic outburst of rage, sure, but more often it's things like passive aggression or chronic frustration.
Hmm. Could you give some examples of what that might look like?
Of course, passive aggression might be snarky comments or quiet non cooperation. You know, the eye rolls, the sighs, the forgetting to do tasks. Chronic frustration is more like a slow burn, it erodes relationships over time.
That makes sense. And I imagine there are early warning signs we can look out for.
Absolutely. There are verbal cues like sarcastic remarks or a raised voice, but nonverbal cues can be just as telling. Things like crossed arms, avoiding eye contact, or that tense, clenched jaw.
So, if we're seeing these signs, what can we do about it? How do we manage anger in the workplace?
Well, it really needs to be addressed on multiple levels. For individuals, it's about self awareness and emotional regulation, recognizing your own triggers and learning techniques to manage your reactions is crucial.
That sounds like it could be challenging. Are there specific strategies people can use?
Absolutely. Mindfulness techniques can be really helpful. Deep breathing exercises, for example, can help calm your nervous system when you feel anger rising. Another powerful tool is reframing negative thoughts. Instead of assuming the worst, try to look for alternative explanations.
Those are great suggestions. But what about for leaders and managers? They have the added responsibility of managing others' anger too, right?
You're spot on. For leaders, it's about creating a culture of psychological safety where people feel comfortable speaking up about their concerns without fear of retribution. It's also about setting clear expectations, providing regular feedback, and addressing conflicts early on before they escalate.
That makes a lot of sense. But let's say anger does boil over. What then? How should we handle those heated moments?
Great question. De escalation techniques are key here. Staying calm, speaking in a measured tone, and avoiding any language or behavior that could further escalate the situation. Sometimes, simply acknowledging the other person's feelings can go a long way in diffusing the tension.
Hmm, that sounds like it takes a lot of self control. But what about the long term? How do we create a workplace culture where anger and conflict are less likely to arise in the first place?
That's the $1 million question, isn't it? I think it requires a multi pronged approach. Investing in emotional intelligence training for all employees is a great start. Teaching people how to recognize and manage their own emotions, as well as empathize with others, can go a long way in preventing conflicts.
Oh, that's interesting. Can you give an example of how emotional intelligence training might work in practice?
Sure thing. Let's say you're in a team meeting and a colleague dismisses your idea rather harshly. With good emotional intelligence, you might recognize your initial anger, take a deep breath, and then respond by asking for clarification rather than lashing out. It's about managing your own emotions and responding thoughtfully rather than reactively.
That makes a lot of sense. It's like giving people the tools to navigate difficult situations more effectively.
Exactly. And it's not just about individual skills. It's also about creating systems and processes that support a healthier work environment. Things like regular feedback loops, clear conflict resolution procedures, and addressing systemic issues like power imbalances or unfair policies.
Well, this is all fascinating stuff, but let's put it into practice. Can you give us a scenario to work through?
Absolutely. Here's a common scenario. You've been working late nights on a project, and in the team meeting, your colleague takes credit for your work. You feel your anger rising. What are three constructive ways you could handle the situation? Take a moment to think about it.
Hmm, that's a tough one. I'm sure many of our listeners have been in similar situations.
You're right. It's a common and challenging scenario. Here are some potential approaches. First, you could calmly speak up in the meeting and clarify your contributions. Second, you might choose to address it privately with your colleague after the meeting. Or third, you could schedule a conversation with your manager to discuss the situation and seek their guidance.
Those are all great suggestions. It really emphasizes the importance of choosing a response rather than just reacting in the heat of the moment.
Exactly. And that's really the key takeaway here. Anger in the workplace is inevitable, but how we choose to express and manage it can make all the difference. It's about creating a culture of open communication, mutual respect, and emotional intelligence.
Well said. This has been such an enlightening discussion. Any final thoughts for our listeners?
Just this, remember that anger is a natural human emotion, but it doesn't have to control us or our workplaces. By developing our emotional intelligence, creating supportive systems, and addressing underlying issues, we can create healthier, more productive work environments for everyone.
That's a powerful message to end on. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Until next time, stay cool, stay mindful, and remember, a little empathy goes a long way in the workplace.
Couldn't have said it better myself.